It's Whip Tips, the channel where I muddle through the process of learning how to wrench on my four-wheel drive vehicles and show you, my fantastic subscribers, all the tricks I've learned along the way and some of the most idiotic blunders ever. So I hope y'all are doing okay on this wonderful inflation-filled day where I can barely afford gas for my car or groceries for my house. But hey, at least I have a house. I don't own it, the bank owns it, but it looks like even finding a place to rent these days is a nightmare. So listen. Forget about all that crap for the next 10, 15 minutes. Let my gravelly voice soothe you. Let Doc trick you into thinking that all is well, and at least you're not as stupid as this Doc guy. So what are we covering today? Your Jeep Cherokee transfer case. Sorry, I meant Chrysler, your Chrysler NP231 transfer case. Now, in case you've forgotten this series and what it's about, Cherokee Therapy is about a 2000 XJ I got from Copart, and it's now on life support with the 4.0-liter engine and Chrysler's famous Command-Trac system, which offers part-time four-wheel high and also four-wheel low. Now, my Jeep, and I think pretty much all XJs, someone correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know how widely the NP231 was used in Jeep variants, but I think all XJs had the NP231 transfer case. And it wasn't just used in Jeeps. This picture here is a Dodge NP231, and then this next one here is a GM NP231. And then lastly, this pick is exactly what my NP231 looked like when I first got it. It had that rubbery boot around the rear output shaft, which is actually, that's what's called a slip yoke that joins with the original factory drive shaft. Now that particular thing, the slip yoke, is gone on mine. I replaced my drive shaft with a new Adams drive shaft, and I switched to a G2 axle slip yoke eliminator kit. So don't worry about that stuff. If you don't know what that stuff is, I'm probably going to do a video in the future, or you can look for other videos. There are plenty of videos out there about slip yoke eliminator kits. But in the meantime, what I want to do is check out this. I found this old vid that Chrysler did on Command-Trac, and then let's see what our savior Lee Iacocca says about it.
In two-wheel drive mode, all power is sent to the rear axle and wheels, letting the front axle spin freely. Before shifting into four-wheel drive high range, be sure your speed is under 55 miles per hour. Once in 4 high, the front and rear drive shafts turn all 4 wheels at the same speed, producing the awesome traction that has made Jeep vehicles such legendary 4x4 machines. Just remember, this is a part-time system which locks the front and rear drive shafts together. It should only be used on slippery or loose surfaces like ice, gravel, or rugged terrain. Turning on dry surfaces in 4 high can result in driveline binding, sometimes called wheel hop or tire scrub. Unlike many four-wheel drive units, this system features a neutral position, which allows it to be towed behind another vehicle without uncoupling the drive shafts. 4 low range delivers the low-speed power required for tough off-road or towing situations, locking the front and rear drive shafts. Engine power is sent through another set of gears, multiplying torque to 2.72 to 1. To engage, slow down to 2 to 3 miles per hour and put the transmission in neutral. While still rolling forward, move the shift lever slowly into the 4-low position. Then return the transmission to the desired gear.
Well, that's confidence. But let's face it, if we don't believe in our products, why should you? So if you can find better protection, take it. If you can find a better car, buy it.
You gotta love the confidence that Lee Iacocca has on camera. We need more people like him today. Anyway, listen, fellow Chrysler victims, this is what we're looking at today. After I installed my slip yoke eliminator kit, I noticed a sound that was almost exactly like crickets, and this is a pretty close approximation to it. So once I started hearing that, I threw my car up onto jack stands and I let it run and drive so I could pinpoint the location. Now, don't do that, by the way. I'm not suggesting anybody do that. It's incredibly dangerous, and if something goes wrong, it could be really catastrophic and deadly. So that was really stupid of me. But I was able to pinpoint it to the front drive shaft area, right where it goes through the bearing on the transfer case. Now, that's a problem. The housing for these old NP231s are aluminum, and the output and input bearings are made of steel. So in case you didn't know, steel is much harder than aluminum. So over time, and especially if somebody already replaced the bearings in this thing, what can happen is that the bearings begin to slip inside that aluminum, I don't know what it's called, socket, the aluminum socket where they sit, and they start to spin in a way that they weren't meant to. The inner part is supposed to spin on those balls, right, on the bearing balls. But the outer race is not supposed to spin. That's supposed to stay rigid and fixed in location. And when it doesn't, when the outer part starts to spin against the aluminum, you get the chirp. And a lot of people will tell you that once you hear that chirp, it's time to get a new housing. Now, okay, what we're talking about, if you get a new housing, you can buy a half of a housing, and that's usually over $100. And now I'm talking a new one made by Crown, which is a brand I will never buy again. And yeah, video is coming about Crown parts soon too. Now, you could always get a used transfer case housing, but how do you know if used ones from a junkyard, for example, are not going to have the same problem? Well, have no fear. You don't have to go that route. There is a solution, and it costs only about, I think I said in the past that it costs $5. I was wrong. I think it's about $10, plus the costs associated with buying a new bearing. So, I went, in my case, because I had this chirp, and I was going to have to pull the transfer case apart at the very least. I went for the whole NP231 rebuild kit. So bunch of bearings, bunch of gaskets, bunch of, everything basically, to rebuild the transfer case. Because if I'm going to take the time to pull that thing off and disassemble it, hell, I may as well give it the full overhaul. And trust me, it's not too bad getting these things off, but it takes time and they're definitely heavy. And instead of showing you the whole how-to of how to get them off and how to reinstall it, I'm going to link to my favorite how-to videos down below that I use to do that particular job. And this video is just about how to do the permatex tip, or how to do the trick using permatex. All right, so here's what you're looking at. Permatex sleeve retainer. That's it. It's a high temperature adhesive manufactured specifically for preventing sleeves from spinning in places just like the bearing socket we're working on. So as long as you don't get this stuff in the bearing itself, it should take care of your spinning and chirping. Now, I'll show you what I did. And I'm going to start with the tools I needed to pull bearings and press them back in. And then in a year, I'm going to do a follow-up vid to let you know if the repair held. So let's do it. All right, so what you're looking at here is a pic of the kit that I got. I got this from JB Conversions, and it came with really good seals, and it came with fantastic bearings. Those are, I can't remember, I think the Quest bearings there are Japanese manufactured, and they're top tier. I don't care what bearings you get, or I'm not going to recommend specific brands, but definitely get the ones that are made to last. It's going to cost you more. Don't go for the cheapies, because you don't want to do this job twice in 1 year or 3 times in 1 year. It never pays with Jeeps. My experience, it never pays to go with the cheap parts for critical components like this. It's also nice to have this, which is an aluminum bearing press kit. It's all aluminum, so it's soft, and basically you find the right size of those discs, put it up against the bearing that you're installing, then you've got that kind of cylindrical object at the very top that fits into that little hole, and you tap, tap, tap your bearing into place. I bought this kit off of Amazon. Sorry, I have the old bearings and seals sitting on top of it. But anyway, this is essentially a puller for bearings that are in blind holes or pockets. So this is the case where you can't get to the back of where the bearing sits. And what you're seeing right there are a series of collets that are different sizes. And you pick the one that fits most closely, attach the little silver horseshoe shaped thing up top, and then start screwing it down, ratcheting it down, and it slowly pulls the bearing out of blind pockets. Now, I don't think you can rent this tool. I tried, and nothing I found at O'Reilly's or AutoZone or Advanced Auto came close to what I actually needed to do the job on the transfer case. You can rent similar tools, but I had a hell of a time, so I just got this cheaply off of Amazon. I can't remember the price, but I'll link to it below. Oh my God, there's no getting around this. I hate this. Is the second time I've done this with my transfer case. You have to take it apart and you have to clean it off. So you're going to, I'm showing you pristine parts here after I've removed all the silicone gasket maker and all that kind of crap. The RTV, cleaned up the parts quite a bit and just placed them out to make sure I didn't lose anything or drop anything. And right in the middle there, you see something that's going to be critical to this process. Those pliers right there, those are absolutely critical for dealing with these really annoying Chrysler snap rings that don't have holes. So getting them off and getting them on is a royal pain, you'll see in this video. And so those are called Knipex, Knipex. They're made in Germany. I got those off of Amazon, I think, and I'll put a link to those below. Trust me, it'll make your life easier if you just do an upfront investment in these things and have them whenever you have to deal with these Jeep snap rings that really are a nightmare. All right, so I've got the front of the transfer case laid out on my workbench. Nice product placement there for Permatex. It really is. Look, I love Permatex products. They are really good. I think the Loctite and Permatex are the same company, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, so we're going to do some prep work here. We're going to take the bearing, make sure that it doesn't just slide loosely into the actual place where it's supposed to be pressed in, and it doesn't. Looks good. Make sure that groove, see that groove right there? That has to face out, face to the front. So the lettering of the bearing is also going to be facing to the front. And then we got to do some, as I mentioned earlier, there is some prep work involved. I didn't use any brake cleaner here, but maybe you should to make sure you have a clean surface. So you want a clean surface, not just on the bearing itself where you're going to put the Permatex, but you're also going to want to make sure you clean out the sleeve or the area, the socket area where that bearing is going to go. You want to make sure there's no grit, no grease, no nothing, so that you have a clean surface for the Permatex to bong to. Now you want to make sure you got the right size disc for your press kit there, for your the press that you're going to use. There it is. A sideways thumbs up is a good thumbs up. And at this point, you're prepped, you're ready to go. Time to apply the Permatex. Now, I did not want to apply too much, and I didn't do it the way that the manufacturer suggested. You're supposed to put some on the thing that you're pressing in, and some on the surface of the area where it's going to be pressed into. Well, I didn't want this stuff going everywhere and getting into the bearing, so I only put it on the bearing. And as you can see, I'm being really careful with the application and trying not to just put massive quantities of this stuff on. But I do want enough that it's going to fill gaps and create a bond. And then I go through and carefully kind of remove any excess that's getting even close to getting inside the bearing itself. And then once that's done, you put it in place carefully, and now it's time to tap it home with your press. So you take that and put it on. Now, you're not hammering the hell out of this thing, okay? It's tempting to, because it can be slow to make progress. But what you're doing here is giving it some semi-gentle but firm taps and checking your progress as you go to make sure that you're not sending it in like at an angle or diagonally, because that's a disaster. So as you can see, I'm just giving it a couple of taps, pause, then I pull it out and make sure the progress is good. Lovely hat I'm wearing. My head gets in the way. That's fantastic. Now, and then I continue tapping that thing home and until I feel that it's seated all the way. And then I had to go in, and I noticed some of the Permatex was kind of squeezing out the top. That's okay. Was not getting in the bearing, and I'm just cleaning it off the top and making sure that the only Permatex sleeve retainer is in that area is where it should be, and that's between the bearing and the wall of the transfer case. And then I'm checking the spin of the bearing, making sure that that's not screwed up. And apparently being very obsessive and anal here about everything, so apologize for this taking so long. Sideways thumbs up, good to go. All right, so now we're going to turn over the transfer case, and we're going to check out the bottom and make sure that there's not just globs of sleeve retainer that squeezed out the bottom. There shouldn't be, because as I hammered it in, it should all be going towards the top, and so I'm checking, and there really wasn't. None of the sleeve retainer came out the bottom, and it looked good. And there's the thumbs up. So we're pretty much done putting that one in. And what the Permatex, this is where I kind of screwed up, I mentioned earlier. What Permatex recommends is 24 hours curing time. I made sure to read the directions and point at them. Then I proceeded to completely forget that I was supposed to let it sit there for 24 hours. So, this may affect whether or not my repair lasts. But this part that I'm doing here, this was perhaps the biggest pain in the ass of all doing this job, and it's dealing with these snap rings. Getting them out is hard enough, and the videos I linked to will show you how hard it is to get them out. Getting them back in was even more difficult, and I was worried that as I pushed the snap ring in, it was going to scrape aluminum off of the sides of that of the area where the bearing is. So what I did here was, that's not a problem in and of itself. I was worried the aluminum would get into the bearing, so I'm putting down a layer of paper towels to at least provide some protection until I get to the point where I have to remove the paper towels and let the snap ring go all the way down to the bottom. So did this work? Yes and no. I don't know. In my mind, it definitely helped. But what you've got to do is just put that snap ring in, try and squeeze it with your hands as best you can. I recommend getting the kind of the area opposite the opening. Try and get that area down first. Be careful using a screwdriver. Ultimately, I used a screwdriver to kind of lever it closed and hopefully into place. This job takes forever, just doing this part. It doesn't take forever, but it takes much more effort than I thought it would. And so I'm going to skip forward to here. Eventually, I got the ring placed well enough that I could start tapping it in carefully. You don't want to scrape the side and avoid that as carefully as you can. But I got to the point where I could start tapping the snap ring down, going around the edges to make sure I do it evenly. And then I got to the point where I had to remove the paper towel and basically kept tapping until all sections of that thing were snapped snugly into that the area on the side. There's a groove on the side where that thing actually goes. And so you can see right here, it's seating itself now. We're getting very close. Checking to make sure that the work is done. Yes, it still spins. I think I got a couple of small aluminum shavings into it. There was some resistance there, but there was literally nothing wrong with the bearing itself. So now, at this point, I did something I probably shouldn't have done because, again, this permatex hasn't cured. I like to pre-lube these things. You can either do this with assembly lube or just carefully put a cap full or a tiny bit, not a full cap, and then just pour it into the ball area right there in the bearing. Spin it around, make sure it gets all over the surfaces, and that way when you start the car, you'll be all set up and pre-lubed and ready to go. It won't be metal on metal. There will be something in there to make it to reduce friction. At the rear of the transfer case housing, you've got a pocket bearing. These are basically needle bearings that the output shaft can spin in, that the rear of the output shaft can spin in. And this is where I've already pulled it using that blind bearing puller. And now I'm getting ready to put in a brand new set of needle bearings into that pocket itself. And I'm going to go ahead and use permatex here as well, just in case, since I'm replacing another bearing, and I don't know how many times that's been done in this thing. I'm going to go ahead and do it in this area as well. I did not do this for the input bearing of the NP231, so you won't see a video of that. I didn't do it on that one. That one was very snug, got no indication there was chirping there. So I went ahead and did it without permatex. But this one, I'm definitely applying permatex, and I want it to be a very thin layer in this case because I don't think I really need it. It's just kind of an insurance policy. But if you look behind my hands in the pocket itself, there's a little hole. That hole is for ATF fluid to travel through. And the last thing I want is to gunk up that hole with some kind of adhesive and prevent the free flow of lubricant. There, I'm pointing at it. I don't want to gum up that hole and prevent lubricant from getting where it needs to go. Now, this one was an even harder one to press in than the other bearing I showed you. So I'm probably going to cut this one short. But again, you're being very careful. You're tapping carefully. There's a real danger here of starting it off at a diagonal, and you don't want to do that. So definitely check your work. Be careful. Proceed slowly. Don't hammer the hell out of it and wind up destroying the very bearing that you're trying to put in there. I've done that before, not in this video, but in other instances. So just be careful and go slowly. Make sure your progress is good. So we come to the end of another video, and listen, y'all, I really appreciate you guys watching this channel. That's really it for this particular tip. I've been driving the Jeep for about a month since I did this work. No chirp, nothing. Everything's spinning nicely, freely, quietly. I'm really happy with this repair. Hopefully it will last at least a year. We'll see. Like I said, I'm a dolt. I made a mistake. I forgot to let it cure. I assembled the whole NP231 transfer case. I did have to let it sit for 24 hours before I filled the thing full of transmission fluid because, RTV takes 24 hours to cure, and I wanted to make sure I didn't get any leaks. So maybe that saved me. I don't know. We'll see. If it does fail, I'm gonna definitely ascribe it to my blunder. because I think in looking at videos about permatex, lots of people use it for different applications, and nobody has anything bad to say about it. So fingers crossed. Hopefully this holds. Listen, I hope you have a good day. Thanks for checking out my video. Doc out. Oh, you made it to the end. That's awesome. Listen, I'm Doc. I'm the one who's, the voice behind these videos. And I really appreciate you taking the time to actually watch the whole thing. That's fantastic. If you've got time, if you want to, if you like the video, hit like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit the bell button so you get notified of new videos when I put them up. I'm going to try and do one a week. And I'm going to do a bunch of Instagram stuff, so make sure you follow me there and on Twitter. Instagram's going to be the shorter stuff. I don't have any merchandise yet. I'm planning to as the channel grows. If I succeed, I'll get some merch. For now, if you really want to help me in another way, you like these videos enough, I'm going to put links to my books in the description of the video. I'm a science fiction author in my spare time as well, so I'm juggling a lot of balls. But anyway, I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you at the next one. Hey, do me a favor and turn this junk off. I don't know how to deal with tech.